Well, pull up a chair and set a spell here at Tales from SYL Ranch Live, the vlogcast that reminds you to always know where your towel is. And I'm your host, Bill Stone. Well, tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we have the Fandi Masters mini review of Doctor Who Season 11, Episode 7, Kerblam. Now, to explain my show, for the purposes of those who may be new viewers, or those of you who don't arrive right on the hour to give you a little time to come in, I do live reviews. Sometimes I do serious films and TV, sometimes I do shellac tomorrow, and sometimes I do films or TV with a broad appeal, such as Doctor Who. However, I usually stick to a period from about 1900 to 1980, and that's because the period after 1980 is pretty well documented, what with Star Wars and the great science fiction that we got after it, well, mostly great, and all of the great technology that we got that allows us to do the documentation. But 1980 to 1900 has a lot of science fiction, and a lot of science fiction fandom that isn't very well documented, and so part of the reason I do the show is to document it. I will take any and all questions, comments, and nasty remarks. I will respond to as many of my viewers as possible. You can tell me if I missed something, if I'm completely full of crap, or if I'm just a really amazingly hoopy frood, which is probably more likely. I do typically go into more depth than most reviewers. I don't just say if I liked a film or not. I go into acting, directing, cinematography, the mechanics of making a film. And I can do this to some extent because a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor. And so I can speak with some authority. Not with the same authority as a modern working actor, and I never want to give that impression, but with some authority. As they often say, those who can do, and those who can't teach. And I suspect, at least the way that I do reviews, it's kind of like teaching. However, my Sunday Doctor Who reviews are mini reviews, and that's because I really only watch the thing a few hours before I do the review. I don't go into quite nearly the amount of depth or time that I do on my Monday reviews, but I think you'll still find that I go into a lot more depth than most YouTubers. And I don't try not to just tell you how you felt or how I felt. I try to tell you why you felt that way. As a non-spoiler review for this movie, this episode, I can say that I liked this episode. It is a very nice take, I thought, on a modern problem that I'll talk about in some detail towards the end. It is still not the stellar episode that we've been looking for, but it is probably the best episode of the season so far. So, with that said, I guess I can issue myself a...
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! All hands, prepare for incoming spoilers.
Yes, it is a spoiler alert, and that is because I am the Fandi Master, and that means that the fandom is strong with me, and that means that nothing is new, nothing is original, and at worst, I figure it out about a half an hour early. This is not a boast nor a brag. This is sadly where you find yourself after having watched, read, and listened to about 100 years worth of science fiction. You just can't see all this new stuff for the whole century that came before, and you find there just isn't that much that's all that new in the world, and it oftentimes interferes with your ability to enjoy things. Not so much this episode particularly, but so far this season in Doctor Who, that's been rearing its ugly head quite a lot, which is too bad. So a lot of times I will sit and I will go through a lengthy synopsis of whatever it is that I'm reviewing. However, we will assume that if you go past this part, past this spoiler alert, that means you've watched the episode and you don't mind that I'm about to completely spoil every single aspect of it. Okay, cringe moments. I like to get my cringe moments out of the way. Okay, there's really only one big major cringe moment that I had here. And that is simply this. They kind of gloss over the fact that the AI that runs Kerblam is killing people as a means of getting attention to the army that is being assembled. Okay, back the frack up for a minute. The AI that runs this place is killing people, and nobody seems to care, including the doctor. That right there seems a little bit out of character for me. It seems to me the doctor would want to do something about that whole notion that we have a killer AI. But, you know, for purposes of doing this, I guess you have to overlook it. It still stuck out at me like a sore thumb. This is not something the Doctor would usually let go on. Great moments, because there are some. This is, as I said, the first time that this has felt kind of like a typical Doctor Who episode. Some of the others have been, pushing very heavily into known things that happened fairly recent human history. It hasn't been bad, just kind of predictable because of where it's gone. I do like the fact that this is the second or so time, I think, that the Doctor has used Venusian Aikido. I love when the Doctor uses Venusian Aikido, because this is a callback to John Pertwee's third Doctor, who used Venusian Aikido all the time. And I also get a kick out of it because Terran Aikido happens to be my martial art of choice, so I do get a personal kick out of that when the Doctor uses it. And I do wish, knowing as I do, that the Doctor had used this very, very extensively in the John Pertwee era, that this was something that would have carried forward, into later Doctors. But it's kind of cool that they're picking up now. I like that this is clearly some kind of riff on Amazon and the probable coming future in which virtually everyone, if not everyone, is replaced with AI and robots, about which I will talk about towards the end of this. I liked that Charly was something of a nice riff on the Antifa or some similar terrorist group. And I love whenever you make the Antifa or some similar terrorist group look bad, because the Antifa are, in fact, very, very bad people. I got a kick out of the fact that the Doctor got a fez. It's a nice callback. However, we do know from the Day of the Doctor that she doesn't need the fez anymore. The fez was applicable only to Matt Smith, who almost remembered, as he said, that he was going to need one at some point. But it is still nice a callback. And no, it isn't her anymore. By the way, speaking of that fez, because it's something I haven't brought up in any other reviews, I've never reviewed the Day of the Doctor, although I don't know, it's kind of late at this point. Maybe when the next anniversary comes around, I'll go back and review the Day of the Doctor. I don't know. It is, after all, the best Doctor Who episode ever made. But speaking about the fez for just a moment, in the context of that episode, there is something of a time paradox that's implied in the Day of the Doctor. You see, 11 picks up the fez from a unit display case that apparently has something to do with the Elizabethan era. He then throws the fez into the time fissure, where it ends up on Gallifrey with the War Doctor. The War Doctor then throws it into the fissure, where it ends up on Earth in the Elizabethan era, where 10 and 11 then pick it up. The fez is then pretty rapidly lost in that adventure. I don't think we ever see the fez again, but it is left in the Elizabethan era. And it seems kind of implied, to me anyway, that the fez was left in the Elizabethan era, was acquired by UNIT, pardon me, I have to turn this off, was acquired by UNIT and then placed in the display case, the same display case where 11 got it, which leaves us with this cool little time paradox. Who made the fez? It was never actually manufactured anywhere. It just loops endlessly through time. Got a kick out of that one when it happened. Haven't had occasion to talk about it, but hey, since the fez came up, why not? So, writer on this one is Pete Mekhi. I think it's Pete Mekhi. I'm not sure. His IMDb, often do this with my people. This not typically with Doctor Who, but I do it with their writers and sometimes guest characters. Pete Mekhi's IMDb is not 2011 to present. Boy, do I feel young. He has 15 writer credits with multiple TV series and multiple episodes, one of which is 99 episodes for the TV series Neighbours. You always have to think about that when you're looking at IMDb. You may only see one credit, but in this case, one of those credits translates into 99 episodes. He was also miscellaneous crew and the story editor on 14 other episodes of Neighbours, and has won no awards. I like his writing here. Again, it feels to me more like a traditional Doctor Who episode. It's not where we're getting into things that are so clearly and obviously in fairly recent history. And, for me, it turns into a somewhat more traditional sort of Doctor Who episode because of that. Hey, Larry, number 4 scarf still needs more appearances. Yeah, it would be interesting to have those in there. I don't know. To me, that's so iconic with Tom Baker. I don't know that you could put it on anybody, with the exception of Osgood. I think when she's wearing the scarf, it's kind of nice. But yeah. Performances. As always, Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. I continue to like her as the Doctor. I don't care what anybody else says. This is not, as I said last week, I do not think that this is an SJW NPC thing. I can tell the difference when it is. And if it was, believe me, I would be screaming and screaming about it. Like her performance here as always. Again, nothing that really stretches her talents as an actress, but she still does a good job as always. And as always, hey ladies, guess what? This is the first time that I can decide that a Doctor is hot. Take that, ladies, who have been swooning over David Tennant, Matt Smith, and John Barrowman for the last 10 years. However, when I came to think about that this time, I kind of came up with something. For ratings, it may be problematic that women have no one to swoon over. I don't know that for sure. I don't know. And it may sound sexist. It may very well be. But having listened to the fangirls gushing over prior Doctors, it may be a problem for ratings in terms of keeping them. I hadn't really given that much thought till I sat down to say to myself, well, you get to snicker again at the ladies who've been whining at you about how hot the other Doctors and how hot John Barrowman was. And now, then I went, you know what? What are they doing now? What are all those ladies who used to sit there and swoon over those men doing now? Are they going to keep watching? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's something sexist for me to say, but I have to ask. Is that a consideration when you're dealing with this Doctor? I don't know. Then there is, as always, Bradley Walsh as Graham. Continue to like his performance. Again, nothing here that stretches his abilities or anything. But I get a kick out of the fact that consistently, he goes to get the answers from places that are generally where you wouldn't expect. Bus drivers, janitors, people like that. He's going to get things from there. And he's consistently able to do it. So, I like that. That's part of his character. He doesn't automatically go for the person at the top. He goes to the person at the bottom rung to see how to get something. So I always think that's a kick. Amanda Gill playing Yaz. Again, not an episode that particularly stretches her acting skills or showcases them. There isn't anything here really that showcases anyone's acting skills per se. She does a fine performance as usual. No complaints about it. I do get a kick out of the fact that, she, Graham, Ryan, they've all come to the same conclusion that when people are in trouble, you don't just let them run off by themselves. You go down with them. If you're going to go down a garbage chute or something, or I forgot what they called it this time, but go down a chute. You don't just let them, go by themselves. You join hands and go with them because that's how they roll. And that's how Doctor and her companions have always rolled. So that's good. Same thing with Dustin Cole as Ryan. Again, nothing here that really stretches him. He gets to be a little bit scared, but overcomes it, which we've seen him do quite a lot. Such that as a character trait, it is now predictable. If we see him scared of something, we know that he's going to overcome it. Did like that he was written such that, this whole job thing, going down and acting like somebody on the assembly line, was so totally, he'd done this job before. It was what he was doing before he started hanging out with the Doctor. That was his job. And I get a kick out of that. Oh, God, no, I'm going to have to go do this again. I thought he played that well. Then we have Leo Flanagan, and I could not find a contemporary picture. This guy had to go with a screen cap from the episode as Charly Duffy, who turns out to be the big bad guy in this one. His IMDb goes Again, I feel so old. 2014 to present with 10 acting credits, 1 in post, and he has been exclusively on TV shows with 9 episodes of Waterloo Road. It seems like he is maybe something of a child teenage actor who's transitioning more into adult roles, and the British public would probably know this guy. I don't, but I suspect from what his IMDb says, the British public would probably know him. He's won no awards, but then, hey, he's only been doing this 4 years, at least professionally. His performance here. Boy, I hate to say it. While I didn't have a hard time believing that there would be somebody who might want to mastermind this whole thing, particularly after he loses the girl that he's infatuated with, I found it a little more difficult to believe that he would be the guy doing the masterminding. You've had some teenaged or young adult masterminds in Doctor Who before that I really didn't have a problem with, that I could see them being evil masterminds. It's just that in this case, because he has to play that he's also broken up about this girl that he lost as a direct result of his masterminding, it's just a little harder for me to believe that he's the guy that's going to push the button. Does he do it? After he does it, does it make sense? Yeah, sure, it makes perfect sense in the context of the show. But it's hard for me to believe that he would be the one doing it. Might have worked better. This may have been something on the writer. This might have worked better if the girl that gets killed was not all that close to him. You know, maybe you could make her something like a friend of a friend or just a friend, but somebody that he feels infatuated with and then goes ahead and pulls the trigger anyway. This fell a little flat to me. Then we have Judy Hesmondhalgh. I'm not sure. I think it's Hesmondhalgh. She's got a very strange spelling last name, Hesmondhalgh. I don't think it's Hesmondhalgh. Maybe it is. I don't know. Sorry, Julie, if I'm blowing your name. Who plays Judy Maddox. Now, her IMDb runs 1994 to present, so I don't feel quite as old, with 21 acting credits, with multiple TV series, multiple episodes, including, get this, 1,271 episodes of Coronation Street. And that, friends, is a new show record. I have never seen anybody with 1,271 of anything. Now, Coronation Street is a daytime soap, as I understand it, so, you know, you're going to get more episodes in there. But 1,271 of them is a hell of a lot of working. And again, remember that translates into only one of her 21 acting credits. She also did 8 episodes of Broadchurch, which was completed in 2017, and which she won awards for, that I'll talk about in a minute. And I suspect that given the amount of work that she did on Coronation Street, the British public is probably aware of her, probably knows her face. She has won awards. She won the British Soap Awards 3 times. First in 1999 for Best On-Screen Partnership in Coronation Street. Then the same thing again in 2004 and 2014. And she won the National Television Awards in the UK in 2014 for Most Popular Serial Drama Performance in Coronation Street. Her performance here is great. I liked her performance very much. There was never a point, unlike the Doctor, who was concerned that this woman was snowing them or was one of the evil masterminds behind the whole thing. There was never any question in my mind that she was being totally genuine and totally sincere. And so when she becomes shocked at discovering this evil plot, I totally believed it. Unlike the Doctor, I never for a second thought that she was behind it. I thought that she was totally genuine in her concern for her employees and her concern for what's going on and her utter shock that something this horrifying could be going on behind her back. Good performance there, I thought. Then there is Callum Dixon as Jarvis Slade, another one of the potential bad guys. His IMDb goes 1992 to present with 21 acting credits with multiple TV series, multiple episodes, including 23 episodes of The Queen's Nose, which I haven't the slightest idea what is. And I suspect it's probably also a face that's known to the British public and has won, to date, no awards. His performance, again, pretty good. In his case, there was enough ambiguity that I certainly thought it possible that maybe he was one of the masterminds behind this, particularly when he takes a gun and decides to go and confront the doctor and her companions and the other character. But once you realize, oh, okay, he was doing it because he did not know how deep this problem went. He had been researching it on his own, but he didn't know who to trust. Okay, then it started to make perfect sense. And once that happened, and he was like, no, I'm not part of this. I thought you were part of this. Sort of came out, oh, okay, all right, that makes sense. So it was a good performance. In his case, unlike the other woman, whom I totally thought, I never thought that she was ever involved in it. Him, for a while, it was a bit of a question mark. He might have been up to something no good. In terms of everybody else, the other two characters we really see in here are not there for that long. One of them is there for a little longer. The woman that I got his name here real quick. Up on my thing here. That Charly Duffy was infatuated with. She was there for a while. Seemed to have a good performance and everything, but her whole job was to show that he was infatuated with her, and then to die, even though he knew she was going to. And him saying, well, I don't care. It was worth it for the cause. The other guy was, fine. He wasn't there on screen either. His whole job was essentially to be the red shirt of the episode, to show the audience how serious things were because somebody got killed right at the beginning of it. So, now, in terms of the production, I do have to talk a little bit about the producer, Chris Chibnall. Now, I need to show you the ratings so far this season on Doctor Who. What you're seeing here is the ratings. As you can see now, what this means is the overnight TV ratings only include those who watched it live and those who recorded it and watched it later that night. Consolidated TV ratings include those who recorded and watched it within a week, which makes that a somewhat more accurate measurement of how many people actually watched the episode. The Audience Appreciation Index, that AI, is a score out of 100 that's used as an indicator of the public's appreciation for a show. Over 90 is considered exceptional, 85 or over is excellent, 60 or less is poor, and less than 55 is very poor. Now, as we can see from this, there has been a consistent decline throughout the series. 10.54 million for the first episode, which makes sense. You have the first time we have a female doctor. Of course, lots of people are going to tune in to watch that. And we have been steadily dropping off ever since. And the same thing is pretty much, well, the AI, pretty much the same, 79, 83-ish, pretty much the same. And I have to tell you, these are not horrible ratings. These are definitely higher than during the Capaldi era. The Capaldi low was the episode The Lie of the Land, which hit a low of 4.82 million in the consolidated. So I don't think this means that the show is going to be canceled, but the show has definitely got lower ratings than it has in the Matt Smith and David Tennant eras. So what's the problem? Well, this is the problem. I talked about it last week. Chris Chibnall is the problem. What's missing in stories so far this season are good character development for all the companions, which I said at the top, if you go back and watch the first episode I reviewed, I said having 3 companions with only 10 episodes may make it impossible for you to do adequate character development on all of them, because 2005 Doctor Who has been always about the companions and their character development more than the Doctor's character development. And it bit them. It bit them. There's no way around it. It bit them. But the other thing that's missing are season and even doctor-long arcs. You need season-long arcs that ask questions in a particular episode, answers questions that may have been asked in a previous episode, and you build the whole thing up into a climax that includes the final 2 or 3 episodes. That's how Doctor Who, since 2005, has worked. It has worked very successfully there, and I see zero evidence that that is happening right now. All I see are one-and-done shows. You know, they get in, they do something, they leave. And always Doctor Who gets in and does something and leaves. But it will usually have some undercurrent behind it that will run the entire season, or in the case of Matt Smith, I keep pointing out, that ran that entire tenure. That doctor, because of his involvement with River Song, had very little control over his own destiny the whole damn time. And we're not seeing those kind of arcs here. And I think we need to. I think it is what part of makes Doctor Who since 2005 work well. And this is all on Chris Chibnall. As I said before, I've said it a million times, I'll say it again, I liked that he has taken the Doctor much lighter than in the Capaldi era. I think the lowest ratings you were seeing in Capaldi was largely because, and they have said before, they should have a big banner in the writer's room that says, when you take the Doctor too dark, people stop watching. So taking the Doctor lighter is a very damn good thing. And it is definitely a good thing, too, that we got back to a faster-paced Doctor, which a younger person playing the Doctor can do. But he is missing the big picture. He is probably not the right showrunner and head writer for this show. I think the BBC probably needs to get rid of him at the end of the season and hire someone more like Stephen Moffat before he jumped to the shark after Day of the Doctor. Somebody who can come in with a season-long arc and then build that even farther up into an entire Doctor era arc, which is what happened with Matt Smith. So, direction. Direction here again was by Jennifer Perroge. We have seen her do direction before. No complaints on this direction, no complaints at all. There, again, was nothing here that jumped out at me. For the most part, a bit on the pedestrian side, to be perfectly honest, aside from where it was married to CGI elements. Just nothing that really jumped out at me. You know, you always have to understand, of course, whenever you're dealing with that, is you're dealing with the limitations of a television budget. You're dealing with the 3 enemies of every theatrical endeavor: talent, time, and money. And they have some talent, there's no question about that. But they lack the time because it's TV, and while it's a well-funded show, you still have to allocate that budget effectively, and some shows are going to get more budget than others, and so you have to fight against that to some extent. Cinematography, again by Simon Chapwin. We have seen him do cinematography on this before. Again, nothing that jumps out at me. As always, you hope that there is some give and take between the cinematographer and the director, but I don't know how much of that is going on here. And again, you're still dealing with those limitations: talent, time, and money. Fall back on the old standbys. You knew what you were supposed to look at. You could see what you were supposed to see. You know, there was no point at which I went like with the George Lucas prequel trilogies, where I went, what the hell am I supposed to be looking at now? And I wasn't squinting into the darkness saying, what the hell is that? You know, knew what you were supposed to look at. You could see what you were supposed to see. Hi, Captain Jesse. How are you doing tonight? I am back here on YouTube, if you didn't know, for reasons that one day I may drop a video that is pretty damned incendiary, and I want to have the eyes for it. Visual effects, again, are by Martin Western. There were some visual effects in it this time. There were some blaster beams of some kind or another, blasters being shot around. And there was obviously some very large CGI elements that were, you know, essentially not what I'd call matte paintings. They aren't anymore. But, you know, replication of those delivery guys. So obviously some of that going on. Those were fine. Obviously no problems with those. The blasters looked like blasters. The replicated army looked like an army, as you would come to expect with Doctor Who. We expect, unless the special effects are terrible, we expect that they will look professional and good. Captain Jesse says, what happened? Short story. Well, yeah, I'm doing one of my mini reviews. This is a mini review of the episode of Doctor Who that aired today. So I'm pretty much done spoiling most of it. I'm just talking about the mechanics at this point. And it is mini review, so it's intended to be shorter. I'm trying not to go much longer than an hour, half hour to 45 minutes if I can possibly do it. Because that's a little bit more approachable to people who are watching in the archives. You know, my 3-hour such reviews, like tomorrow's probably going to be 3 hours. 3 hours are great, but the reason I'm doing clips and shorter ones like this is, as I've said, try to get them hooked on the... Hang on a second, I'm going to put myself on mute. Try to get them hooked on some of the smaller stuff and maybe keep them around for the long ones like tomorrow. What happened and why did I return to YouTube? Well, it was very simple. You know how I have been threatening from time to time to suggest that to stop a civil war, my part of the country may have to starve out the cities. I am consistently now, every damned day, I am this close to dropping that video, and I want eyes for it when I get it. So that's why I moved. Production design is by Arwell Jones. Production design is fine here. It is exactly what you would expect to see in a very large... and I should have said visual effects too, obviously. Those very large shots when they're inside of, you know, the conveyor belt area when they've got things moving around from one place to another. Good special effects there. Again, no qualms with that. And the production design, again, by Arwell Jones. And Arwell does a good job here. It's what you would expect the interior of Amazon to look like, overlooking, of course, that Amazon appears to be damn near mistreating their employees and operating an unsafe workplace. How these guys pass OSHA inspections is beyond me. But in any case, that production design was fine. It was what you would expect to find in a safe version of Amazon, let's put it that way. Again, clearly kind of doing a riff on Amazon, I think, here, and I thought it worked well. Makeup was by Amy Rydell again. I'm sorry, Amy Riley again, rather. Makeup here was functional. There was, you know, the makeup, as always, did tell you a little bit of something about the character. You know, hairstyles and things like that can tell you things about the character. And it was all appropriate. It was totally appropriate, so no problems there. Costume design, again, by Ray Holman. Now, the costumes. I have no idea how much the delivery guys were a costume versus some level of special effects. Probably costumes would be my guess. And in that respect, Ray did a good job here. Those costumes look like androids who would be, in this case, both overseers, the supervisors of people, or they would be the delivery people. Makes sense. They were robots that looked. They were supposed to look ultra friendly. It was like watching a version of the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation with your plastic pal who's fun to be with. Only you don't have the genuine people personalities that went around saying, "God, I'm so depressed." The music, again, by Segun Akinola. It's starting to sound a little generic. At this point in a series, in a season, we will usually hit a point where they're starting to use stock music again. I have not listened to it enough to know if they're getting stock. With Murray Gold, I could usually tell when we were getting stock music because each of his doctors had a different musical theme that went along with him. And so when we were getting that musical theme that I had already heard once in a previous episode, I knew it instantly. Here, we are probably hitting that, but, you know, aside from when he's gotten weird and creative, like using blaster beams in the first episode, there's nothing here that I jump up and down about that then makes me think, wait, are we hearing some stock here? Maybe we're not. Maybe we're hearing original music and I just don't know. But for the most part, largely forgettable, I hate to say. I hate giving that. But as an audiophile, somebody that loves the soundtracks and has lived them my whole life, kind of generic. Sorry, so good. So, at the end of the review, we might ask ourselves, is it any good? Yes, it is a good episode. It is a very good take on a modern problem, about which I'm going to talk about very explicitly in a minute. And it is still not a stellar episode. But I would have to say it's probably the best episode of the season so far. So I would recommend it. Yes, go ahead and watch this one. Nothing that'll blow your socks away, but it comes off as a rather traditional sort of Doctor Who episode, unlike some of the ones that we've been getting. And as I mentioned last week and weeks before, this is not a social justice warrior thing. A lot of people out there are complaining that Doctor Who has gone all SJW NPC, and I just don't think that's true. I just don't think it's true. I can tell when that's happening. You know, you get me started on Star Wars The Last Jedi, or for that matter, The Force Awakens, and I will go on and on about social justice warrior. But I don't think we're seeing that here. I really don't. I think these stories, you could drop in any other male doctor and they would still work. This one, however, just seems more like a sort of enjoyable, classic sort of Doctor Who kind of, story. So, as I said, I was going to talk specifically about this problem that is starting to plague us and is going to plague us even more. And that is this: AI and automation. We are now, and that is one of the focuses of this episode, we are now rapidly reaching a point where I can no longer imagine any job that cannot be automated. Off the top of my head, of course, taxi drivers, truck drivers, restaurants, both fast food and otherwise, all the way from the front staff, the wait staff, all the way back to anyone who might be cooking the food. Retail stores, of course, what few may exist after Amazon and other retailers completely take the world, which they've almost done. Manufacturing jobs, certainly. We will never see manufacturing jobs like we did in the 50s and 60s. All of our news media, because they suck already anyway. AIs could not possibly do any worse. And in fact, we saw, I think, China or somebody had the first actual true AI journalist, fully computer-generated journalists come up recently. It's just a talking head. How much AI do you really need to do that? I think it's quite possible that most of our entertainment will be made by AI. Whole movies we already do with CGI. And our entertainment generally sucks at the moment anyway. Now, if you look at what AI are generating for things like music and scripts and stuff like that, it tends to be kind of weird. But as those AI mature, they could probably make better than what's coming out of Hollywood now, because what comes out of Hollywood now is derivative crap for the most part. Even people in my field, computer programmers, computer infrastructure maintainers like myself, systems administrators, etc., there's no reason we can't be ultimately replaced as well. There is no longer any job anywhere in existence that I can see that will not ultimately be replaced by artificial intelligence and automation. Now, in point of fact, when you know a little bit about the way AI works, you find that AI pretty much runs the world already. Now, we just don't call them AI. What we call them are algorithms. Now, strictly speaking, an algorithm just represents a step-by-step process of doing something. You do this, then you do that, then you do that, then you do that. At the end, you get an outcome. But when you get into larger platforms and businesses, and I can use here YouTube, Google, Facebook, and Twitter as examples, there is no one at those companies who understands their algorithm anymore. It's not possible to understand the algorithm. It is too big. There are too many different things going on within that algorithm about the decisions that it makes and the reasons that it may make for those decisions. No one understands them fully. Now, there are individuals who understand pieces of the algorithms, but that is a completely fleeting thing. Because, as often happens, somebody might get promoted. And so they leave a position where they understand a part of the algorithm, go on someplace else where they don't. The person that moves in behind them does not understand the algorithm anymore. One hopes that they'll learn it, but you can't be certain of that. And they'll only understand a piece. There's a whole other section over here that somebody else is working on or some group of people is working on, and they might understand that for a while, but then they move on, and it's totally fleeting. Anybody who understands any given part of that algorithm is a temporary person. The algorithm itself is now incomprehensible to the people who actually maintain this algorithm. And what that also means is that changing it in any meaningful way, like going into YouTube or Twitter's algorithm and altering it to behave much differently from the way it does now with human hands, is near impossible. Because you'd have to understand the algorithm. If you don't understand it, then you can't change it. And we're also seeing the fact that AI can now modify its own algorithms to adapt to changing circumstances. And this, in IT, I see it all the time. Amazon Web Services, which is where a lot of businesses have moved all of their multi-billion-dollar servers into virtualized environments in Amazon, is configured in such a way as if you once set it up the right way, it will expand and contract what it needs in terms of resources based on the load it's getting. Well, it's not much of a step from there to move to an algorithm that alters that based on the loads without human interaction. And that means that we have algorithm altering itself. It alters itself based on changing conditions. And in fact, we see that in other places. Simple stuff like how much electricity is being used on a particular part of an electrical grid, how much water is being used on a given day, at a given time, in a given place. The system itself knows how to alter what it's doing based on changing circumstances. And so when you get an algorithm capable of changing itself, the fact that nobody understands it anymore becomes less relevant. And I don't think there's any reason to believe that this won't continue and, in fact, rapidly accelerate. And I think it's very possible that within the next decade, we will all be out of a job. And the question obviously comes up, what do we do then? I don't know. I wish I did. What I see, ultimately, because of what we have for our governments, is governments taxing large businesses in order to pay a universal wage to everyone. This would be a bad idea on many, many levels, because if government is controlling your wage, then they will withhold income to, political dissidents, people with unpopular views, people who have health conditions that mean they're not going to, be able to stay around on the planet very long. Any number of factors. They can just say, no, I don't think we're going to take that money and put it toward you. And I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. In the past, it was pretty easy to see free market solutions. But now I look at literally every kind of job that I can imagine, and it can be performed, or is about to be able to be performed, better, faster, and cheaper by artificial intelligence and automation, or some combination of the two. I don't see a free market way out of this. And as a libertarian, I would like to. I wish I did. But near as I can tell is the future that we actually face. It is nearly right upon us, and is something that will be done whether I like it or not. And I suspect that ultimately it will be universal incomes provided by taxing very large companies. Captain Jesse says, what will we do when this happens? Play video games? Well, yes, that's what most people will do. A lot of people do stuff like that. I'll do stuff like this, although I'll be reviewing shows that were made by AIs. Who knows? Maybe they'll have AI reviewers. Who the hell can tell? But I just mean, how do we get a living wage? How do we get enough money to eat when none of us has a job? And that's what keeps me up. Okay, well, as I say, I try to keep this mini reviews to about an hour or less. Looks like I'm probably going to be successful this time around, so yay. Bind fires. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Captain Jesse. Bind fires? I'm not sure what you mean. So I might do a little bit of ad copy here, as I often do. Next Sunday on Tales from SYL Ranch. Arriving in 17th century Lancashire, the TARDIS team becomes embroiled in a witch trial. Now, the arrival of King James I intensifies the hunt for witches. Could something more dangerous be at play? That's next Sunday on the Fandi Masters review of Doctor Who Season 11, Episode 8, The Witchfinders. Then, tomorrow, just in time for the holidays, on Tales from SYL Ranch. In this bizarre and occasionally psychotic film, Chewbacca and Han Solo try to get to the Wookiee homeworld to celebrate Life Day, but are impeded by an Imperial blockade. Now, Chewie's family passes the time with various forms of entertainment. That's tomorrow on the Fandi Masters 40th Anniversary Review of the Star Wars Holiday Special Abridged 45-minute Watchable Edition. And, of course, Tales from SYL Ranch is live here Sundays and Mondays on YouTube in North America at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Pacific. And if you're working off of UTC, that's 2 a.m. the following morning. Oh, bonfires? You mean bonfires? Well, again, doesn't heat your house, doesn't keep you warm, doesn't. I'm just thinking about how we make money in present day society. How the hell are you going to do it? So, upcoming reviews. Now, every Sunday for the next, let's see, we're into episode 8 next week, so it'll be 3 more weeks. I'll be doing the Doctor Who mini reviews like I'm doing tonight. And tomorrow, as I said, the Star Wars Holiday Special Abridged 45 minutes Watchable Edition, which I have a link to in the description below. Definitely suggest you check that one out. I got a couple of 3 links down there. You probably want to watch this one, because this one I got very, very lucky. The guy who made the edit that I suggest you watch and that I'm going to review, I was able to get in contact with him late last week. And so I'm going to have some insight into how he made that I don't usually get. It is the sort of insight I really love to have in terms of how something I think was good was made. But I don't usually get that kind of insight. Usually I have to tell you, well, based on my experience, I think this is what happened, or I think that's what happened. But in this case, I'm going to be able to tell you, okay, here is what I know exactly happened, because he was able to give me some actual specific insights. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And if he happens to be around, I don't know that he will, but, he may pop in. Don't know for sure. He thought maybe he couldn't make it tomorrow night. But regardless, do watch tomorrow night. It's going to be one of the few times when I'm going to be able to say to you, here is what this guy did. Here is some of the specific things he did. And by the way, there is some news that I was unaware of with respect to the existence of the Star Wars Holiday Special in its original master form that he knows about. But I won't tell you that tonight. I will force you to watch tomorrow. As I said, the only reason that I think you should ever watch the full Star Wars Holiday Special, and I've got a link down there below for the best quality one I've ever seen. It says on it that it is a first edition VHS copy. And I believe it, because it is the best quality version I have ever seen. It looks like a VHS copy off of air. So, the only reason I think you should watch it, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I actually changed the criteria because some of it was overlapping. You should watch this if you're a Star Wars purist and you want to say that you've watched everything ever made with the Star Wars name on it. You should watch it if you're incredibly high, which preferably the amount of blow that Carrie Fisher was doing when she shot it. Or if you're a psychopath, because it'll probably make sense then. Otherwise, don't watch it. Watch the 45-minute abridged watchable edition. That is a much, much better one. It'll never make it a great movie, but it makes it into a coherent one and changes the tone on a number of different places. So after that, after tomorrow, the following week, on November 26th, I'm doing Quatermass 2. On December 3rd, The Fly, starring Vincent Price, hits its 60th. And then on December 10th, as I've said before, the film that I have been occasionally working on now for the review for months, Superman, the movie, hits 40th anniversary. The best Superman movie, I think, that will ever be made. December 17th, the one I've been working to up with these Quatermass ones, Quatermass and The Pit. And then December 24th comes around, and Doctor Who is not doing a Christmas episode, so I will not be doing one of those. December 24th is Halloween, of course. My family usually does a lot of opening of Halloween presents, and as it happens, right over to my left over here is where the big Christmas tree is going to be. I don't know that I'll be able to do it, but I'm going to discuss with my family just turning on the cam and having Christmas Eve with my family. I don't know, we'll see. Otherwise, I'll just be dark that week. December 31st, well, from 8 p.m. Central Time to midnight in all American time zones, we celebrate New Year's Eve with the Fandi Master. Remember to bring your sham pipple, because we'll be reviewing the Orville Season 2, Episode 1, Primal Urges, as well as coming up with something else to go on. Larry, Halloween. Did I say Halloween? I meant Christmas Eve. Halloween is come and gone. Christmas Eve is what I was talking about. If I missaid it, that's oops. On January 1st, I'm going to come in the next day because Doctor Who is doing a New Year's special, so I'll come in a few hours after the thing has aired and see if we can't do a review of that. January 7th, I have the 70th anniversary review of The Son of Frankenstein. And then on January 14th, we will celebrate my birthday with the 100th anniversary review of The Mistress of the World. So with all that said, I might say something like this.
Say, pardon me, but could you help out a fellow American who's down on his luck? Hit the road!
So, if you like what I'm doing, please like this video, subscribe, and tell all your friends, family, neighbors, and pets and livestock to do the same. You can contribute via my PayPal tip jar, my Patreon. You can visit my website. The tip jar and Patreon are down below, as is my website, which is now www.wrstone.com. I decided, what the hell, I'm just going to put the thing on my regular website. And you can also find some other links there about how to support me. I don't dare now put the Amazon wish list down in my description, because if I do, YouTube will probably kill me. So, as always, my Amazon wish list does include a few things that are photographic that will help out my production values from a photographic perspective, but also a nice little laptop in there that will make all of my technical problems instantly disappear. And if you're crazy enough to actually buy me that thing outright, you get to be the program director on this show. You can tell me what to review, when to review it, how long to review it, and I will not necessarily agree with your assessment of it. That is the only string that I will put on there. And you can see this all on my website, www.wrstone.com, which I have nicely filled out there. You can also see a schedule of upcoming reviews, and I have a bunch of them scheduled into next year. I don't have them all scheduled by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have a bunch of them. As always, need to thank my viewers who have contributed. It is appreciated twofold, the first of which is because any money that you give me is going to accrue until such time as I can actually buy that laptop in my Amazon wish list. But also, I say it over and over, but it's true. Having once been an actor a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and knowing that what I'm doing here does require a certain level of showmanship, the notion that anybody would pay me for both of my opinions and what I'm doing is a huge ego stroke to me, and I really do appreciate it very much. As always, in the immortal words of Elvis Presley, oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So, I guess, get my card up here, that would be all the time that we have today, boys and girls. So tune in again tomorrow for the Fandi Masters 40th Anniversary Review of the Star Wars Holiday Special, Abridged, 45-minute watchable edition, so you can see how editing can make this thing into something that is at least watchable. So until then, this is Tales from SYL Ranch, the vlogcast that reminds you to always know where your towel is. And I'm your host, Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.